to about 25. And we'll take the size right up to about 40. Something like that. Okay, so it's pretty subtle. Just helps separate the can a little bit from the background. Okay, next thing we want to do is add a bit of wiggle to the position of the can. We've already done the puppet animation, but you can see that the bottom and the top of the can are pinned, and that kind of makes the can look a little bit unnatural. I mean, I guess it looks pretty unnatural anyway, having a can dancing. But what we can do to help this a little bit, make it look a little more organic, is to have the can just shift a little bit in its position. And we can do that using the wiggle expression applied to the position value. Just solo position, option click, and type in wiggle. And we're going to set the wiggle frequency to 3 and the amplitude to 10. Let's just solo this and just do a quick preview. Just watch how the can shifts around its position just slightly. So it's only very subtle, but it just means the can isn't locked into that position. It's just shifting side to side, just ever so slightly. You could always increase the amplitude to have it move even further, but I thought any more than 10 just looked a little bit weird. It's just shifting slightly side to side. You can watch this point here and you can see it's just shifting slightly. Okay, so what we're going to do next is animate the can so it zooms into position at the beginning of the animation. That'll make the beginning of the animation a little bit more dynamic. Let's just unsolo this and we'll set a keyframe at the beginning. Shift that to about 10 frames. Just going to drag this one. How many frames is that? That's too many. Just we'll just move this back a bit. Whoops. Okay, one more frame. So about 10 frames. Okay, then I'm going to go back home and just move the can right back. And actually down a little bit because we want it to sort of start in the middle of this star. Just going to shift that down just to there. So now it'll fly out into position. Just like that. And you might have noticed in the finished animation that the can was actually invisible, but we saw the glow outline. We can set that up pretty easily. We're going to do that by animating the advanced properties of layer styles, the blending options, advanced blending. And if I adjust the fill opacity, you can see I can actually make the can invisible but keep the glow outline. So I'll set a keyframe at 100%, go back to the beginning of the animation and just drop that to 0. And we should have our keyframes in line here, yeah, so both of them are only 10 frames duration. So as it zooms up into position, it just fades up. Just makes it a little more dynamic at the beginning. Okay, so next we're going to add the little graphic element that sits at the bottom of the frame. That's this pattern here. Just move it down to the bottom. And this is an Illustrator file, so I can continuously rasterize this. Just going to scale this up a bit. You can see now that it's more than 100% scale, so it's actually going soft. Once again, because it's an Illustrator file, we can switch on continuously rasterize, and that will sharpen it up. And we'll just change the blend mode to overlay. And just drop it below the can. Now you notice that this element here is actually part of the design on the can. And this can and this object here was part of the Adobe CS3 launch graphics. And I just thought it was nice when I was designing this that we had some other element from the can in the scene. So I just thought it looked very interesting at the bottom of the frame. And notice on the can that we had these blocks. That's where the idea for the animated blocks in the background came from. I just looked at the art here and thought, how can I do something that relates back to the can art? And I didn't mention that before, but that's where I got the idea from. Could have used these as well. I guess this star element pretty much is what this organic star is. I could have done multiple small stars, but one big star was more suitable for this. So a good idea to look at the art that you're given in your work, and you can get a lot of creative ideas for how to create an animation, create something that's moving from those still images. All right, what we're going to do last of all is add the text. Now, in this comp, I've already got the text set in place, and I've got it starting at about 6.5 seconds. The text is going to fly in over about a second, and it's going to sit in place for about 3 seconds. You always want to make sure in these kind of animations that you leave the viewer enough time to read the text at the end. So it's a good idea to leave at least 2 seconds or maybe 3 seconds, depending on how much text there is. So let's just turn that text on. And this font is DIN Black. It's a great looking font. And of course the text says natural energy. Now we want the text to fly into position. So to do that, I'm going to twirl down the layer. And for the text layer, I'm going to choose Animate. And at the moment, you can see I have Enable Per Character 3D turned on. When you create text, that won't be turned on. This was already on for me because I'd been practicing this before I presented. But we want to enable per character 3D. This is a new feature in After Effects CS3. Okay, and next we want to add an animator group, and that will be for position. And we're going to add to that rotation. Okay, so now we have position and rotation all sitting under this animator group. So let's set some keyframes. I'm going to animate the X rotation and the Y, and maybe a little bit of Z. We'll see how that goes. And of course, position. So I've set keyframes for the finished position. Now we're going to go back to the beginning of this layer and just going to move this text forward. Just hold down the Shift key to make that move a little bit faster. And I want to position it up so it flies into the center of the frame. So just change the Y and out. That's about right. So the text will fly in like that. And how many frames is that? 10, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we'll just shift these keyframes back. That's 1 second. 1 second may be too long. We can just see how that goes. Alright, so we want the letters to fly in one by one. So to do that, we have to change the range selector properties. So under Advanced, I'm going to choose for Shape, Ramp Up. And see now we have this ramp shape. Just like that. Okay, now I've just noticed that this is something I sometimes do. I've set keyframes for position and for rotation, and what I needed to do was set the initial value for position and rotation, but I needed to animate using the offset property. And this is something I sometimes do. I'll be working along and I'll set keyframes and go, "Oh, I needed to use the offset." So I'm going to undo a couple of these things. What I have to do is delete these keyframes here and this keyframe here. I could have easily stopped the recording and done this again, but it's good to see sometimes when mistakes are made and how to fix them. So let's just change, let's see, we'll reset the position back to there. Now I'm going to drag my text, let's just see, we'll take this back up to square, drag this back again, just get it back to where we were. Just shift it up to about there, and out. Okay, so I'm going to set the X rotation to about 3 revolutions. And we'll see what happens with the Y and the Z. Now watch what happens if I drag the offset property. See how my letters are flying into position? That's what we wanted. As I drag the range through the text, once the text is no longer part of the range, it returns to its original position. That looks pretty good if you wanted to have the letters slamming down one by one, but this is why we changed the shape to ramp up. Look what happens now as I drag the offset. Very nice, huh? So by using keyframes for offset, we can get this effect, but by setting keyframes for the actual position property, we can't actually create this look. Here we can get the letters tumbling in one by one. We might just add a little bit of Y rotation just to make it a little more dynamic. Just drag a little bit of Y and a little bit of Z. Okay, let's just set some keyframes for that. So I'll set a keyframe for offset at 100%. Go back to the beginning of the layer and we'll make that 0. Actually, we've got to make that -100, sorry. 0 won't take us all the way back to the beginning. And now we're in the slightly wrong position because our text is right in front of us. So let's just change the position value slightly, X position, just to slide it across, just like that. And in comes the text. Make that over 1 second. And we'll just ease into this keyframe by choosing Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease In. One thing you might not know, one thing that might confuse you, is the difference between Easy Ease In and Easy Ease Out. The way to remember it is that Easy Ease In is you're easing into a keyframe, and Easy Ease Out, you're easing out of a keyframe. And in this case, we're easing into the second keyframe, so we choose Easy Ease In. Okay, let's just see how that looks. Okay, so it's way too fast, so we'll just stretch out this second keyframe, make it about 1.5 seconds. Might even want to bring this back just a little bit, maybe back to about 6 seconds. And that gives us about 2 seconds. I think 2 seconds would be enough time for it to come in. If you make things move too fast in 3D, they may as well not be 3D because they fly in so fast. I like to, when I'm using 3D, especially with words and letters, have them move slow enough so you can really see the effect. We get a nice tumbling effect here. Let's just preview that. Okay, that's much better. Alright, so now we want to apply a couple of layer styles to the text, just to help it sit better in the scene. This is always an issue when you're working with text over busy backgrounds like this. It's important that the text is readable, so it can take a little bit of work and a little bit of finessing to make the text be readable and also make it look like it's part of this scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to colorize the text, and I'm going to sample a color from the background, maybe this yellow. That's not bright enough, so I need to just modify that slightly. Maybe something like that. Okay, now I'm going to apply